Hey, all right, everybody. So glad to have a chance to spend some time with you this morning. Wanted to give us a chance to do some meditation together, but also continue some of the meditations we've been doing over the previous weeks and look at some points that I've been contemplating a lot over the last 6 months or so. In particular, over on these three related topics: clarity, value, and flow. Clarity, value, and flow. And so I'll dig into what I mean by those three things. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at a new meditation, going a little bit deeper, shall we say, than just breathing meditation, but in a similar vein. And I've tried to describe this in some simple terms as like meditate on that slight ringing sound in your ears or that sort of background noise. I do fear that I have greatly undersold that meditation by framing it in that way. It doesn't sound that compelling when I say it out loud like that, but to give the context, what we're doing when we're engaging in breathing meditation is we are trying to get out of our head, which for modern educated people is quite a challenge in itself, trying to get out of our head and tap into something in a more grounded reality. And in this case, the grounded reality of our body, to begin to anchor our thoughts, so we're not just worrying and spinning around and distracted. And as a result of that, anchoring our thoughts, anchoring our mind, beginning to develop a deeper and deeper experience of peace. Because peace is it is the natural state of our mind. It's that state we return to in deep sleep. It's the state we had, when we were first born. It's the state we return to at our best moments, but it can be disturbed by worries and a lot of thinking. So we build our peace by focusing on our breathing. But there's a characteristic of our breath that is where we're tapping into something that's a bit outside of our control. But breathing is interesting because you can kind of control it. It's your body's natural way of staying alive, but you can control it a little bit. And so it's possible to have your conscious, intentional mind kind of take over the meditation more than is helpful, actually. So one of the things about this meditation I'm introducing today, which is called the meditation on inner sound, is that you can't really control it. You can't change it. It's not something that you can, your conscious mind can intervene in and get involved in. It's really just our chance to experience the sound of silence, as I've been saying, the experience, the sound, the inner sounds that come. Maybe you hear them in your ear. Also, just maybe a buzzing sensation in your body, or just this underlying hum and rhythm of life doing its thing, the kind of background noise of your body and mind. And you can give it loftier names like chi or prana or inner energy or something like that, or you can give it more down to earth names. But what we're doing is simply becoming quiet and then recognizing that there's not just pure silence. Even in the quietest spaces, even if you're a deep and silent retreat, it's not actually pure space. It's not just pure silence. There's a little bit of a buzz to it, a little bit of a hum to it. And if you focus on the hum, it gives you something to pay attention to that's a little bit tangible, a little bit more tangible than just meditating on empty space or meditating on the mind itself. It's in that direction. It's sort of on the empty space spectrum, but there's a little bit of something to hang on to there. And so let your mind settle down, become more quiet, become more still, more peaceful, but at the same time gives you something tangible to hang on to. So it's a little bit easier than just going into some of the more subtle meditations where even that sound kind of disappears. So I'll guide us through that, and then that'll give a chance then for me to explain more what I mean by clarity, value, and flow. So as usual, we can find some comfortable position for our meditation. You can meditate sitting, lying down, standing, walking, whatever. Just don't get hurt. So careful doing it while driving. So taking a deep breath in and out just to reset. Then another deep breath in and out, just inviting ourselves to relax. And then another breath, just asking ourselves, what is important right now? And we can become aware now of the sounds around us, the outer sounds, perhaps the fan whirring on your computer, perhaps noises in the background around you. We allow ourselves to become aware of these outer sounds, tap into that sense. But rather than getting caught up in the details of what we're hearing, we focus on the hearing itself. We just think these are all just sounds. They're all equally just sounds. And these outer sounds may come and go, they may increase and decrease. But we can also try to become aware, is there some background, subtle background sound, some inner sound, like whatever slight, subtle ringing. We're just becoming aware of this, recognizing that it too is just a sound. we simply take in all of the various sounds around us, but in particular, try to notice that any subtle underlying sound, buzzing or humming underneath it all. It's just sound, it's just information. But by paying attention to it, our mind can become more quiet, more inwardly drawn. Notice that we are not choosing for this sound to arise. It's simply arising. We simply need to accept and be aware. But this acceptance and awareness itself can help to make our mind more calm and open, clear. we can gently recognize that all of these sounds, these sensory awareness, inner sounds, outer sounds, they are indications that we are alive, that we have consciousness, ability to learn and benefit others. And so we can develop a sense of good fortune, a feeling of appreciation for these moments of consciousness, the opportunity that this consciousness gives us. And we can develop an intention to use this short time here together to the very best of our ability to increase our inner peace, our wisdom, our good heart, for the sake of ourselves and others. And then we can open our eyes and arise from our meditation. My primary spiritual teacher over 20 years or so was a Buddhist monk who'd come from Tibet and established a Buddhist tradition in England first, and spread it to the US and other places around the world. And over the history of Buddhism, there had been a number of these movements that had been kind of a unification, like unifying this and that. You know, from one point of view, we're all dealing with the same challenges all the time, right? But sometimes, you know, individuals fixate on one thing or another, and you can get these sort of folks who say, "Oh, do this or do that or whatever." So there were some groups that focused really strongly on loving kindness historically, and others who focused more on wisdom. And so there was this movement called the Union of the Vast and the Profound, bringing like loving kindness and wisdom together as one thing. And some, number of these other movements. But his goal, my teacher's goal, was to establish a union of Dharma, or these spiritual teachings, and daily life. And part of the reason that was his focus was that Buddhism historically had always been relegated to the monasteries and something a little bit exclusive. You know, most of the public didn't have the opportunity to read or sit and listen to, sophisticated teachings and so forth. And so most of that knowledge and experience was sort of locked away in the minds of these monks and nuns and monasteries and so forth. So his vision was helping to make that more of a to integrate Dharma and daily life. And so that was kind of what we taught and tried to promote. And so all of our meditation centers, they were out sort of in the public and open to the public and so forth. And when I stopped being a monk, this is sort of we didn't, in our tradition, we didn't have a graceful exit plan. So there's only like crash and burn or hit the ejector seat or whatever. So I left being a monk. And then I thought, okay, well, what am I doing now? And then over the years, I've sort of come to appreciate that what I'm still chipping away at is this idea of the union of Dharma, or the union of spiritual teachings and daily life. And to be honest, it's a big old massive challenge, right? To try to figure out how to be in the midst of our modern busy lives and still also be peaceful and benevolent and so forth. And within the business world that I've found myself, it's got its own challenges about how to help to run an effective and successful business. It's hard enough just managing your own personal affairs. I'm regularly struck by how challenging it is just to be a successful and effective human. Like, to actually get your taxes done right in the US is quite a feat. To actually follow a reasonable diet and all these kinds of things, they're quite a feat. But to run a business is a whole nother level of challenge, because you have all of these, all of your squirrely workers, sort of going off in different directions, and the company has to make a profit and keep everybody happy. And it's a lot of stuff to balance. And so I have the opportunity to be in some discussion groups about how to help businesses to be more effective and IT teams to be more effective. And one of the main topics that we keep coming back to is the idea that people don't do a very good job of thinking. We have thinking problems. And companies waste enormous amounts of money and have enormous failures and struggle and so forth, just because we don't think things through very well. And on one level, it feels like there's just three challenges that businesses face and just three challenges that humans face for the most part. And that is clarity, value, and flow. And what I mean by that is clarity in the sense of gaining a clear understanding of what's actually going on, so to speak. Value in terms of understanding what is valuable or important in a particular situation, getting clarity on what's valuable, and because that's what really moves us. So clarity alone doesn't move people in any particular direction. It just helps you to have an understanding. But value is the sort of bias of things. It's where we want to go. And flow has two meanings. There's an outer meaning of like workflow between a team. There's a smooth handoff, but there's also an inner meaning, if you're familiar with this idea of this sense of psychological flow, this flow state where you can just be engaged in an activity that is naturally joyful and engaging and so forth. So what I've come back to again and again is that at every level, at a big organizational level, at an individual level, these topics are critically important: clarity, value, and flow. And the reason I bring this up in the context of our meditation is that one of the things we're doing when we're doing a simple meditation like breathing meditation or this meditation on inner sound is we're gaining clarity. We're gaining clarity on all of that stuff or that information that's not just our thoughts, right? Because what happens, we have all these thoughts and ideas and opinions and just going, thinking. But we're not necessarily very clear about what's happening even inside our own body. We're not necessarily very aware of what's happening even inside our own body. We're not aware of our breathing. We're not aware of these sort of inner sounds, and just becoming aware of these inner sounds and breathing, and aware, oh, I'm tense here, I'm tense there. This topic of mindfulness is a big aspect of that. Is just clarity, like recognizing, oh, look, I'm jealous. because what happens, especially where there's something a little bit unflattering, we kind of push it away. We want to deny. We don't really want to be clear. We really, honestly, we say we want clarity, but I'm not so sure. We don't necessarily want to be clear that there's an underlying self-centeredness in our mind. We'd kind of rather keep that murky because it's a bit unflattering. But unless we become clear about what's happening, for example, inside our own mind, clear about what's happening in our own body and so forth, on some level, or more clear, not necessarily perfectly clear, but more clear, we're just kind of off battling some conceptual battle in our thoughts. Now, the equivalent of this in business is where the business thinks, oh, this is what we're doing and so forth. But the people who are the actual workers don't think that that's what they're doing, right? There's like different points of view at different layers of the organization. So that's where clarity causes things. That's one of the ways clarity causes things to fail in a business sense. But the second topic, on the topic of value, value, emotions, feeling, they're all quite tightly tied up. I was trained as an engineer in this computer science world. And there's this idea that, oh, it's just information, right? You shouldn't be emotional about things. Oh, it's just a lot of information. But fundamentally, and all beings, every living being's mind has a bias. We're biased. We're biased towards being happy and biased away from being miserable and in pain. And anyone who tries to deny that they're biased is not clear, doesn't have clarity about their own real motivations. Without some bias, we don't do anything. Every time there's an action, it always comes from this underlying bias, which is, I want to be happy, I want to be free from suffering. And it takes a gazillion forms, right? What happiness means to one person, or, well, what the circumstances that might offer happiness to one person are very different from the might offer suffering to another person, right? Like, I love spreadsheets. It's just, nothing like a good spreadsheet. My wife, not a fan. I don't know. I don't understand. Doesn't make sense to me. But like, we all have our individual tastes, but it is value, or positive value, means something that in some way kind of beckons happiness or offers happiness, seems to promise, give some hint of that would make us happy. Value is often used almost interchangeably with money, right? Like, what's the value of this thing? Oh, $100. Wow, that's pretty valuable. But money is what you'd call a proxy for money. It's a stand-in. Or, sorry, I think I said that backwards. Money is a proxy for value. It's a stand-in for value. Money on a moment-to-moment basis can't actually make us happy. Not having money and then finding money can trigger a feeling of happiness, but it's like circumstantial. So money is, there's lots of studies about, how money stops making you happier after a certain point. It just means that you start chasing more and more and more expensive enjoyments. Your happiness doesn't increase, but the amount of money you have to spend to try to make yourself happy does increase. So what is value? Value really is that inner experience of happiness. And so we if we think about value as that broader umbrella, in the business context, it's all about the exchange of value, which literally has to start with a good motivation. You have to start with it. I was interviewing somebody for a job yesterday, and he said something at the beginning of the interview that really struck me. he'd done a number of things in his life, in his past, that indicated that he had a very good heart and compassionate motivation. But he said, fundamentally, we have one of three motivations. We either want to help, ignore, or exploit. And that before we undertake any activity, we should check, what is our motivation? Do we want to benefit? Do we want to ignore? Or do we want to exploit? And back to the clarity topic, rarely would we ever acknowledge or admit that we have a wish to exploit, but it's not. It's in there, folks. Like, that motivation is in there somewhere. If it's in the minds of humanity, it's lurking in our minds. We're just like some little subset, some sampling of humanity. So we need to acknowledge where that motivation might be, or that motivation of indifference and so forth. And we need, as best we can, to cultivate the motivation to benefit. And the motivation to benefit just means, while we ourselves want to experience value, it is more important to try to offer value to others. And that's what a business does. Finally, at the end of the day, any lasting business has to provide more value to its customers than it's taking in. But we can have the same mindset as individuals. We can think, how can I bring value? How can I bring value in this interaction? How can I bring value to the people around me? Of course, we need to consume some value just to survive and stay alive, but benevolence is in this topic of value as well, our wish. Now, if you can't help in a practical way, you can still help with your wish. If you're religiously inclined, you can frame that as a prayer, just a wish that others benefit. If you're not religiously inclined, you can just think, having a good motivation and realizing how incredibly similar we all are. I wouldn't say, not even just similar, we're basically just the same. We're all made of the same stuff. We're all made of minds that go in and out of clarity, strive to find value, and go in and out of flow. And we're no different, one person from another. What you're experiencing right now is really just a sampling of the experience of all beings. And so you are already connected with all other beings, whether you're directly communicating or not. And so you can bring value to others even just by wishing benefit to others, even just by cultivating a mind of loving kindness, a good heart of loving kindness and compassion. That alone, because we are not disconnected from others, that alone is bringing real benefit. And is a powerful practice. Helps to tame our self-centeredness, our indifference, our tendency to exploit, and so forth. As well, it helps us to become more peaceful. So this is the topic of value. But all of the value is maybe can't get into this fully, but there's a sense in which value is like a sense of coming home. What is most valuable for any of us is happiness, but there is some natural connection between happiness, peace, and a sense of home. My wife was quoting the other day, I forget who she was quoting, but I think maybe it was Thoreau or somebody. Family are those people who, when you have to go there, they have to accept you. They have to take you in. So that's the definition. When you have to go there, they have to accept you. But there's something about family where, I've said this before, but sometimes people talk about a business, is a business like a family or not? And they say, oh, be careful of any business that says, oh, we're a family, right? Because they're still going to fire you, right? but there's a sense in which a business is very much like a family, in that you show up there in that family or business, whatever, and there's a bunch of other people there already, and they're not necessarily the people that you would have chosen to be stuck with, but you are stuck with them. They're not necessarily exactly perfect, exactly the way you want them to be, but you are nevertheless stuck with them. It's true in your family. In fact, it's true with ourselves, and it's true in our business. And so the word family and the word familiarity, right, just means like coming to accept. And there's a sense in which value is also just a process of coming to accept and just coming to settle in, right? Coming to feel at home in our current circumstances rather than wishing they be different. And so there's an aspect of value which is just accepting, even accepting the difficult conditions we're in. And the last topic I wanted to touch on is this topic of flow. Flow, the word means like flowing water, flowing. It just means it relates to movement, right? But in the sense of our own mind, it's that inner sense of movement, like we're doing something, like we're getting something done. And there's this deep natural craving to have a sense that we're doing something or something's happening. And what's interesting, when you put on the TV and you watch TV, even though you're not doing anything, you're not expending any energy, there's still some sense of flow. There's some sense that something's happening, right? And it's amazing. TV is amazing because you don't have to expend any energy, but then all of this stuff's happening. There's a sense of progress and activity and flow and so forth. And that's one of the reasons why we like these passive enjoyments. If we play video games, or people play video games, it feels like you're doing something. Your body's not moving, but there's a sense of accomplishment. It's the same. I had a friend when I was in high school. He just liked getting in his car and driving around. People do that. They just get in their car and they just drive around. Why do you do that? Because there's a sense of progress. There's some sense of flow, right? So you have this craving for a psychological sense of flow. But at some point, you've also got to, this is, I guess, the intersection on the business world. In the business world, you actually, normally people have this big division between relaxing and rest and personal time, during which they watch TV and play video games and go out driving and all these kinds of things, and work. And work, you have to drag yourself into work and force yourself to do this and that and so forth. But work theoretically is where you would actually make some progress, doing something that would be of value to someone else. But these things are not irreconcilable. So the golden state in a business context is where there's a sense, there's an experience of workflow, like people are working together very smoothly, but also where people have an inner experience of flow, like we feel like we're making progress. Now, what's interesting is that in meditation, you can experience a sense of flow as well. Now, in meditation, you are most certainly not going anywhere, right? Externally, you're most certainly not doing anything outwardly, but you're even that experience of concentration, right? When your mind really gets into, your mind can get into meditation. And this experience of flow is not different from the experience of concentration. So it's just good to know that we can do stuff, engage in actions on a very subtle level. You can do stuff, engage in actions on an outer level. And if you're really jamming, if you're having a good time, if you're really into it, then there's an experience of flow and it's naturally enjoyable. But you can do things on a more and more and more subtle level. Talking like I'm doing now, that's doing something. But even meditating is doing something. It's just on a very subtle level, but getting closer to this inner experience of flow. So anyway, just wanted to frame flow means action, basically. So clarity speaks about the information, understanding, awareness. Value is the bias, ideally in the good sense, like bias towards happiness. But we're biased one way or another. So information, the bias, and then that leads to action. So our actions are always based on what we actually find valuable. And our values are always based on our clarity, our understanding. So as our understanding increases, what we find to be valuable changes. And as our values change, what we do, our actions change as well. And as we become perfectly clear, utterly, ultimately clear about what's going on inside us, the similarity, the relationship to what's going on inside of others, we realize what's most valuable is our own happiness, but not just our own happiness, others' happiness as well. When we get that real clarity on what's most valuable, then we can begin to get an experience of flow and progress that's coming, where we're really making inner progress. We're making progress on this path towards happiness not by outer actions necessarily, but we're making inner progress. We're on this inner path or inner journey of moving more and more steadily closer to making ourselves and others happy, or bringing happiness to ourselves and others. So anyway, I offer that for your reflection. Hopefully you find something beneficial from this explanation. So why don't we take just a couple of minutes in conclusion to meditate a bit and to come to a final conclusion. So we can again close our eyes if that helps us to focus, and take a deep breath in and out. And just reflecting on this topic, we can think our entire life and the lives of every other person we ever encounter, all human, non-human beings, even businesses, organizations, civilizations, governments. Everything that they understand, everything that they experience, everything that they do can be summarized in the topics of clarity, value, and flow. And for the benefit of ourselves, for the benefit of others, may we continuously increase our own clarity, especially our clarity about what's happening inside ourselves, our understanding, knowledge of our own inner experience. May we come to increase our appreciation of the value of our own lives, the lives of others, and the happiness of others. The opportunity that this life gives us to make progress towards finding pure happiness for ourselves and others. And in this process, may we increasingly have an experience of flow, an experience of progress, accomplishment, even as we're moving on these inner paths, these more subtle, invisible, quiet paths, inner progress that no one else can see. We can conclude with a wish to carry this good motivation into our daily life without forgetting, and try to return to this again and again throughout our life. Hold this as best we can continuously throughout our life. Okay. So we can open our eyes and arise from our meditation. Okay, thank you everybody very much. Delighted to have a chance to be with you this morning. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Rick. So as usual, I'll hang out here for a bit if anybody wants to stay, share thoughts.